Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to be discussing the top 10 of the Goodreads Choice Awards in the fantasy category. Last year I read the top 10, well I technically read 9 of them. I was going to do it this year. I said in my 2 Goodreads videos that I've done that I had every intention of doing it. And then I woke up this morning is the 26th, which is when the top 10 were announced, and I couldn't help myself. I was going to wait to film it, but I was just like, no, I'm gonna check. And I immediately deflated. And I was just scrolling through, I was like, there is one of these that I want to read. One of these books. And then I just kind of came to the realization, why are you going to force yourself to read 7 books that you don't want to? Because I have read 2 of the top 10. 3 now, actually. So I read 3. There's 1 that I actually want to read. So there would be 6 that I would be reading just for the sake of a video. And it's fine if there's 1 or 2 video books that I want to read just for the sake of a video. But 6, that's a bit insane. I just why are you doing that to yourself? You don't want to do that. And so I was like, yeah, I don't. So I'm not going to do that. I was wrong with my predictions, which I demand a recount. This actually, it doesn't mathematically make sense. So we have The Foxwife, which I don't think that was in the top 10 number of ratings or average rating. So yeah, it's a 4.01 and it's 13,000. I'm sure it's a good book. It just from looking at it, it seems very literary fantasy. So I'm sure it's a good book. But and obviously a 4.01 is a good rating. I think anything above a 4 is actually anything above 3.8 is honestly good. I don't want to be it doesn't deserve to be there, because it could be better than all of the books that have 3 times the amount of ratings. That's not what I'm saying, but it literally it doesn't make mathematical sense. It must have a dedicated fan base. It is a historical fantasy set in the real world. I feel I have to be in a very specific mood for historical fantasy, for because that's the thing, is I do enjoy it, but I feel I have to be in the right mood for it. And I'm not really. I've only actually recently read The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Catherine Arden, which did not make the top 10. And that is the favorite out of all 5 of the 20 that I have read. It was so good. And The Tainted Cup is the actual one that I am actually intrigued to read. I've heard really good things. I think it's kind of a mystery fantasy. So I feel we're getting a different genre kind of blends. So then we have Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Klune. So then we kind of we have this cozy bit romance. So this is the sequel to The House in the Cerulean Sea. I will actually talk about this in detail because I read it for the Goodreads video, and as I said, I have since scrapped that. And I did not like this book whatsoever. I give it a 2 stars. This is a completely unnecessary sequel to The House in the Cerulean Sea. We follow Arthur and Linus after the first book, and it is basically an exact repeat. A person from the government comes to the island, except this time, instead of them being half decent like Linus, who's just, a bit uptight, but he's a good person deep down, this person is actually just awful. And it's about kindness and teaching to love each other and all that. But I genuinely, as I said, it is a complete repeat of the first book. There's it's nothing new. It's the exact same plot. And I don't understand who the book is for, because obviously TJ Klune, all of his books are very LGBTQ plus friendly. They all, I think all of them, the main romances are gay. And also this is the sequel to The House in the Cerulean Sea, and the whole message of The House in the Cerulean Sea is treat others with kindness. Discrimination for no reason is a bad thing, and all of that stuff. But I read that when it came out, I think in 2020, maybe 2021. I read it when it came out, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 stars. That was I got on the hype train pretty early, before that controversial interview, which yikes. And I don't remember it being so wordy and preachy. And so I'm not sure has he changed the writing for this. And so that's why I was kind of confused who the hell this was written for. Because if it's a sequel, obviously people have read the first book where the message was, be kind and all of that. And I think the message, it was very shown, not told, let's say. We learned it through seeing these actions and being in Linus's head and all of that. And then we get into this one, and it is so preachy. Like, it's like he's like, you're in Arthur's, because it's more told from Arthur's perspective, and he like turns at you and he's like, now let's dwell on that. Why could this word be harmful to the magical community? Think about it. Dwell on, which is like, if number one, I'm not a child. Number two, I have read and understood the message of the first book. People who are like, you know, bigots and whatever, they're probably not going to, let's be honest, pick up the sequel to The House in Cerulean Sea, because they'll probably read that book and be like, is this book about me being a bad person? So they're not going to read this. And so this isn't going to change their mind and be like, you know what? I'm going to be an accepting person now. So why are you spoon-feeding it to me, who I understood the message when I read the first book? Like, what? So then we have The Lost Story by Meg Schaefer. I'm kind of baffled by this. Like, yes, a lot of the books were around the 21,000 ratings. So, like, it's not that surprising that it would get in. But it's a 3.84. Which is not a particularly high rating, especially compared to other books. So I really don't understand. It's, I believe, a retelling or inspired by Chronicles of Narnia. We're getting a lot of different types of fantasy. But yeah. Again, that story doesn't interest me. I didn't really care for the original Chronicles of Narnia. I loved the movies growing up. I read the first book and I liked it well enough. I did not like I think I read the second one and I did not like that, and I didn't continue after that. So yeah, so I don't really care. Empire of the Damned by J. Kristoff, and I don't want to read the first book. I don't want to read the second book. I did not like the Nevernight trilogy by J. Kristoff. Oh my god, I sound so negative in this video, but I don't care. I did actually predict that this would get in. I was right about it because it has a 4.57 average rating. That is insane. And also he did create a huge fuss when he didn't get nominated last time, so his ego was bruised. But yes, so this, I guess, a bit more like grimdark. Again, we're taking off another genre, I guess. So then we have The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo, which I originally said this is going to win, but I could make a case for the Somewhere Beyond the Sea, because that is going up in ratings like crazy. Like, it's already at 50. When I like filmed my first reactions, I think it was like 46. So it's getting up there. I have also read The Familiar. I give this a 3-star. And so again, another historical fantasy. This one is set in Spain, and we follow a witch, and she is Jewish, and she has obviously converted to be a Christian, and because she does not want anything bad to happen to her or her family, and she has these powers, and she knows that if she was found out, she would be burned as a heretic. And one day these powers slip in front of her employer, and the employer kind of starts to use her powers as a way for her to get a bit of clout. This catches the attention of people, and she ends up undergoing some trials, and so she ends up undergoing these trials to try and prove her worth to the Inquisition. And the bits I enjoyed, but the bits I didn't, basically. I found a lot of it very boring. I didn't feel for any of the characters really, but I loved the dynamic between the main character and the main character. Like, it is mainly her story, but like, he's significant, and I loved their dynamic, and I loved when they were on the page together. But when they were separated, I just felt nothing for either of them, which was a weird experience. I think I don't love stories where religion is the main theme. I like when it's more of a side theme. So just not really the book for me. I do think it was well written. I think there was some beautiful, like, kind of gothic feeling. I think she did a great job at the atmosphere and all of that. It just, the plot itself kind of bored me. So then we have The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown. And in fairness, I feel like this has gotten like a whole load more ratings out of nowhere. This is a debut novel, which obviously is exciting, and it says that it's full of magic, adventure, and romance. So again, like, contemporary fantasy. I believe, like, it's very much like a book lover, you know, books about books and all of that kind of stuff, which I know a lot of readers do like. Again, I just don't know. I think, I'm not gonna lie, I think the cover just doesn't do anything for me, and I think that is generally the reason why this does not intrigue me. Because, like, looking at the synopsis, I'm like, oh yeah, but then I look at the cover and I'm like, We have Five Broken Blades by Mike Cortland, and I know this one was very much is it a romantasy or is it a not romantasy? I don't really know the answer to it because I haven't read it, but I do know that I believe all 5 of the characters are in some sort of weird love pentagon. I feel like I've kind of given up on romantasy, and I know this is in the fantasy category and not in the romantasy category, but I have heard a lot of people describing it as romantasy, and I have basically given up on it unless it's by T. Kingfisher. So what can you do? Blackbird Oracle by Deborah Harkness. This is like the fifth or sixth book in the, I don't know what the hell it's called. All Souls? Is it All Souls or something? It is All Souls. It's 5th. First book is obviously A Discovery of Witches. I don't care about reading that series. I'm sorry, Emma. I know you love it. I will probably read it one day because you love it so much. But again, like I feel like it's a very like romance heavy one, and I don't really want to read it. And so like I'm not gonna. The end. And then I believe that the only one left I have to talk about is Emily Wilde on the Map of the Otherlands, which I guess is going to be the one that I vote for. So this is a sequel to Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I don't know why it took me so long to think of that name. And I actually read the first book for this video last year. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy the second book as much as I loved the first one, but I did overall enjoy it. I think for me, what kind of like, this was definitely like a little more romance heavy, because I think in the first book, because of the fact Emily was motivation is purely for herself and her own academic reasons, whereas in this one she is like motivated by her relationship with Wendell. It does feel a bit more romantic in nature, even though it is still very much, oh, they're going, the two of them, exploring, and stuff happens. I gave it 4 stars. I did overall really enjoy it. I liked the addition of the new characters to make sure that it doesn't like get stale or anything. I liked the new kind of area that we explored. I continue to enjoy the writing style. I think I want more light academia recommendations, like A Natural History of Dragons, Emily Wilde. I love the light academia in fantasy. So if you have any of those recommendations, please let me know. But I overall just enjoyed it. Like, it's a very well written and like character motivated story, and I like those, so I enjoyed it, and this is probably the one that I'm going to be voting for. So then we do have 2 other books that I can talk about. So The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Catherine Arden. This is probably the book I would have voted for if it had made the top 10, which I thought it was going to, and I don't understand why it hasn't. I actually really enjoyed this. It was just short of a 5-star. The first half dragged on just a little too long for me. I knew I could see, like from the start, I could see what I thought the themes and what I thought the point of the story was going to be, but it just felt for the first half we were kind of like meandering, and we were like 2 very separate stories. Like, yes, they are siblings, but like I want to see where these stories line up and we start to get to the point of it. And after like the 50% mark, I fell in love with the book. Like, the last 50% was incredible. It made me tear up. It made me emotional. It was really, really, really impressive. I think the writing was good, but as I said, it was just that first half was really slow to get going. So yes. And then I also read A Sorcerer's Call, which did not make the top 20, despite the fact I read it because I thought it would. But also I read it because it was the one that I kind of wanted to read the most, and also I'm reading all of T. Kingfisher's backlist. And I actually really enjoy this. This is my favorite fantasy, because if you didn't know, T. Kingfisher, she has her books split into fantasy, romance, horror, and fantasy. Though I will say, like, she a lot of the times will take elements of all of them into each of them. And I only read one of her horror books. I liked it enough. I've read all of her fantasy romances that are technically out, and those tend to be my favorite from her. And her fantasies, for some reason, a lot of the time they might be fairy tale based or anything, they tend not to be my favorites from her. They usually sit around the low 4 or 3-star range. And I think actually A Sorcerer's Call is actually my favorite that I've read from her so far, in just like the purely fantasy category. I really enjoyed it. It follows Cordelia, whose mother is a sorceress, and her mother like takes control of her body, and her mother has decided to marry this man, and then she will work to find Cordelia a rich husband and basically set them up for life. And so we follow Cordelia's point of view as she is like terrified and has to try and like come into her own, but we also follow the sister of the man that Cordelia's mother wants to marry, and she does not trust this woman. And she also like is very suspicious of like what is happening with Cordelia, and the two of them kind of team up. I had just a really good time with it. I don't think it was anything like particularly special. I think if you've enjoyed some of her other stuff, I don't see why you wouldn't enjoy this. Still very much fairy tale based. I feel like I've seen that it's Goose Girl inspired. So those are my opinions. Sorry that I'm not reading them. I care about my own sanity too much for that. Okay, so it would seem procrastination has actually kind of worked out for me for once, because I filmed me reacting to the semi-finalists when the semi-finalists came out, and then I didn't edit it and post it. So now the results are out. So I guess let's do it. So as I said, I guess it worked out in my favor because I can react to the winners. Oh, well, there it is. I just got spoiled. It immediately showed up. Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Clue. Okay. I was literally just about to talk about how I keep going back and forth whether it's going to be The Familiar or TJ Clue, but literally it just immediately opened up on the fantasy results for some reason. Obviously I had the tab open on my iPad from the finalists. Does it have more votes than people who read it? Yes. Like, people who read the first book and really loved it voted for the second one, like, let's be honest. Decided that while I'm here, I might as well talk, because is fantasy dying? Very dramatic. No, spoiler alert. I'm not going to go like full in depth about this. It's going to just be a little like 5-minute rant, because I've seen a lot of people talking about that, like so many videos this year, and all of them vaguely misogynistic, if I must say. Kind of being like, wow, women coming into our space and destroying it with their romance. Like, obviously none of them said that, but like reading between the lines, it felt a little. This is purely me ranting, rambling. This is purely based on my feelings and my vibes. I have no evidence to back this up. Which, in fairness, I feel like goes for a lot of those other videos, though those people probably sat down and like scripted them before they started just rambling, whereas me, not so much. A lot of them, like, their evidence was like very much anecdotal. Oh, I heard from someone that publishers hate fantasy now. But like, I can say, well, I heard from someone that Brandon Sanderson kills unicorns for fun. That doesn't actually make it true. So obviously, like, yes, first-hand evidence, you know, accounts, they are important, but like, it's like, you know, when that's all you're going off of, you don't have any actual numbers. And I also don't have any numbers. I'm purely speaking on vibes. When like this list came out, everyone was like, wow, the fantasy's real bad. And again, kind of like being like, fantasy's dying, fantasy's dying, fantasy's dying. And like, it's just not true. Even I myself kind of like only in the last little while, because I have kind of reflected on it, like, is it a bad list? Like, I actually can't tell that it's a bad list because I haven't read any of them. And I think a lot of us were probably very unfair. And I think this like leads into my first point is it fantasy is dying, or you are just not willing to try something that is out of your comfort zone? And I'm not saying you should go and try read romantasy. I've tried a couple this year. I think I've kind of just come to the conclusion that very few work for me. A couple do, but in general they don't. That is fine. I don't think people seem to understand. Trends are always a thing. Trends always cycle. We constantly say it. We say it with clothes. Oh, the 90s are back, the 80s are back, all of that. Like, and so like, it's the same with everything. Music trends, book trends, movies, music, all of that. Like, there's trends. And right now we're just not in like an epic fantasy moment. That doesn't mean that there's not people writing epic fantasy, but it just means it's not the priority. You need to kind of take a breath and be like, okay, but this is a time for me to expand my taste or try something new. And I'm not saying, oh, try romantasy, and because I myself have kind of given up on romantasy. It doesn't seem to really work for me a lot of the time. There's a handful that do. But like, I'm not even talking about romantasy. I'm talking about cozy fantasy, which, yeah, can kind of sometimes overlap with romantasy. You know, but then we have grimdark, we have epic fantasy, we have contemporary fantasies and urban fantasies, and, you know, and like the more literary, the more historical, all of that stuff. And I think it's a good time when the trends aren't like that to either A, try some of these different subgenres that you didn't think of, because you might be surprised. Like, I definitely have been surprised. Or number two, you go back to when the stuff you loved was trendy and you try and find authors you haven't read from. And because I'm not gonna lie, and hey, I will put my hands up and say, it's something that I also need to work on. A lot of these people that are making these videos complaining about it, they haven't read a lot of, like, you know, a lot of their shelves are very white men. I know a lot of, women, they get brushed away as romantasy even if they're not, or they get brushed away as YA fantasy when they're not. And I think we all need to do it. And it's something that even I myself have kind of reflected on, because I feel like I was very harsh in the first half of this video about the 10 finalists. I was like, these are bad, but I don't know that. Like, yes, they're not speaking to me right now, and if I'm being honest, I'm not in a very good reading mood over the past year, so like they don't particularly speak to me. But I think one day I could go back to some of them. Like, the synopsis, like, they didn't sound bad, and I think it was kind of like I was very harsh, and I think a lot of us were very harsh when we were just like, this is a bad list, because we don't know that, because we haven't read them. Authors have put their hearts and souls into these, and a lot of them were debuts, and I think we need to stop constantly relying on our favorite authors, those ones that are like, the really big names. We need to be searching for the smaller names, whether it's indie and self-published fantasy, or whether it's just debuts being trad published. And as I said, so like, it's definitely something that I have reflected on, being like, I was a bit mean about it. Like, these people have put their hearts and souls into these books, and I just like brushed them away, being like, eh. So as I said, I'm in a bit of a weird mood reading wise anyway, but I think eventually I will actually probably go back and try some of these. So that's kind of like my point number one, is maybe we should all be a little nicer and try, don't just brush things away being like, it's not for me. We should try them, give them a go. You might be surprised. Then my number 2 point kind of relates to that we need to stop relying 100% on our favorite authors, those staple names and all that. And it's not even that. We should be glad and happy that those staple authors are being given the opportunity to take their time with books, because I feel like we've heard authors talking about in the past, like, I can't remember which author it was. It was a YA fantasy author, but I remember she was talking about the fact that, like, there was so much pressure. You have to have a book out every year. And I'd say it was probably fairly similar in the fantasy genre, is every year to, build your audience, to make sure that you have a loyal following that's going to read every single book, and, show that you're reliable to the publishers and all of this. And I think that the fact that, like, Brandon Sanderson, he can take time to write a kid's book and, write some other projects, write some YA books and all of that in between doing his Cosmere. Like, I think that's important, and it's probably good for him as a writer to explore different avenues of his writing. Like, even with his secret projects, like, yes, they're part of the Cosmere and all of that, but like Tress of the Emerald Sea was very much like, it has a very strong romantic plot, I would say, in it. And so him getting to play with that and how that can maybe like influence his writing in future books going forward, and like the things you can learn from that. And even like V.E. Schwab, like the fact that she's not writing the Threads of Power series back to back to back. She's releasing a new book next year, Bury Our Bones in Midnight Soil, which is such a long name. And then after that, she's releasing Victorious, which obviously that series has been real spread out. And so like the fact that she has time to do that, to perfect the books that she wants, can only be good for us, that we are going to get quality books, that the authors have actually been able to perfect their craft and make books that they are proud of and that we will enjoy. I think we all need to give authors in general maybe a tiny bit more grace about that, and be like, I know, and like, listen, I know I'm desperate. Sometimes I'm like, come on, give me a new book. Give me a new book. I want one. But like, we maybe shouldn't be so harsh on them if they don't have a book out every single year. And we should be happy that, and be excited that like the next one that they're working on, they're really working on it. And like, even like S.A. Chakraborty is another one, because obviously like the David trilogy, like that was a book every year, but now Mina was released last year and there's still not really much word. I know she's working on the second book. In fairness, she did have a child, so like, but she's able to sit with this book and balance it and not be like completely pushed aside. She knows it will be waiting because we want her adventurous stories, because we're not getting enough of them. And so I think we all need to calm down. And that kind of leads me into the third point, which is, guys, it was just a lull year. Like, it happens. Because like now that like everybody has been announcing their books that are coming out next year, everyone's like, fantasy is gonna have the best year ever. And it's like, 2 months ago you were talking about how the genre is dying. It's like, which is it? And it's like, well, we knew all along. It's not dying. It's just, I mean, it's like everyone on Twitter, like Stan Twitter, the music side, and they're all like, there's gonna be no music out next year just because like Beyonce and Charli XCX and Ariana Grande and Taylor Swift and Sabrina Carpenter and all of them, they released music this year. Like, so many of like the biggest pop girls released music this year. They're all like, music's dead next year. Like, that's not true. This kind of connects back into my first point, which is like, okay, maybe not the biggest names are going to be releasing music next year, but do you think that it's going to stop just because like the music industry as a whole is going to stop just because they're not releasing a new song? No, that's not how it works. There's going to be smaller artists, and like, let's be honest, there's going to be so many big artists that are also still releasing music because it's the music industry. There are so many people in it. There's still going to be music. The world's not going to stop, and you can go back and re-listen to Brat and re-listen to Cowboy Carter and re-listen to the Tortured Poets Department, which in fairness, Taylor Swift's probably going to release her last two re-recordings anyway, so we'll have that anyway. But my whole point is, next year might be a lull year for like the very biggest pop stars. That doesn't mean that there's not going to be new music. It'll be great music. You see where I'm connecting this? Is just because this year was a lull year. The biggest names in the genre weren't releasing, and they were working on projects behind the scenes. And it should have been a time that we go and explore and, you know, either going back through time or trying to find the next big names. Because next year, as I said, now that everyone's announcing their releases, everyone's like, oh my god, fantasy is so back. It's like, it was never gone. Basically, that is the bottom line. No, fantasy's not dying, guys. It was just a quiet year. Starting right now, like Brandon Sanderson, I think his book is out. It's out real soon. Like, it's out this month anyway. Joe Abercrombie, Mark Lawrence. I don't know, men. I'm so sorry. What's the name of the Richard Swan? I think he has like, is it related to the other series that he has out? I'm vaguely intrigued about that. I know. My anticipated releases, I'm so excited for it. Catherine Addison, we have Martha Wells, we have V. Schwab, we have the second book not in this series because that series was obviously finished, Will of the Many series, which I haven't read the Will of the Many yet. I have read that series and I really enjoyed it. And I'm waiting for the paperback for the Will of the Many, which still isn't out. My anticipated releases should be coming soon and I can't wait to talk to you about some of them because I'm very excited. So yes, so this is a bit of a rant, but no, fantasy's not dying. So thank you guys so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, subscribe and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.